Good afternoon. I'm Ann Silver with the Reno+Sparks Chamber of Commerce, and I'm pleased to welcome everyone to this webinar. I appreciate the participation of our moderators, panelists, subject matter experts, and our chamber business members who share a mutual interest in contributing to carbon emission reduction, mitigation strategies, climate justice, and plans that address the real impacts of climate change. I'd like to thank Lynn Barker, former sustainability manager with the City of Reno, for inviting the Chamber of Commerce and many other organizations to participate on Reno's Climate and Sustainability Committee that worked for over 3 years to develop the city's climate action plan. It was unanimously approved by the Reno City Council and paved the way for much of what you'll hear about today. We also credit Governor Sisolak for taking the initiative to start Nevada on its path for climate policies that are integrated into goals for economic development and business diversity. And I'd like to acknowledge both of today's moderators, Senator Chris Brooks and State Climate Policy Coordinator, Dr. Kristen Everett, who have been instrumental in leading the charge for ambitious but reasonable climate policy in Nevada. We treasure where we live, and with the release of the State Climate Action Plan this week, we are well positioned to begin the path to long-term sustainability and achievement of our energy goals. If you have a question during this webinar, please post it in the chat with an email address, and if the question isn't responded to today, we'll respond tomorrow. Again, on behalf of the Reno+Sparks Chamber of Commerce and its 2,000 plus members, thank you for your participation and engagement in today's event. It's now my pleasure to introduce David Bobsien, Director of Nevada's Office of Energy. David.
Thank you, Ann, and thank you to the Reno+Sparks Chamber of Commerce for hosting this important event. This has been quite the week for us at the administration, and we were pleased to deliver to Governor Steve Sisolak on Tuesday of this week Nevada's first ever comprehensive climate strategy. The strategy was in response to an executive order that Governor Sisolak signed last November, directing his entire administration to take up the charge and put together a strategy across the administration to deal with and address the climate crisis. I'm relieved to see such fantastic response to the plan at this point. One reporter yesterday referred to it as exhaustive. I certainly want to give kudos to Dr. Everett, who is our climate coordinator, that really spearheaded much of this, but also to all the agencies of the administration that participated, so many personnel, the exhaustive list of stakeholders that participated in our listening sessions. This was quite a year to try to figure out how to meaningfully collect input from the public, and we think that we definitely hit the mark on that. And then also just our partners across the state that worked on this and are now eager to put the next foot forward and keep working and keep this conversation going. So I'm excited about the conversation that has started around this plan. It's been very robust and it will continue. And today's event is just one part of that. And I think that this is a unique event. And as you mentioned, the city of Reno has certainly been a major player in this space, and it's with so many of you that are either speaking today or participating that were a part of the city of Reno's climate efforts, and I was proud to have been a part of that, and I'm thankful. So we have a great foundation now to have this conversation at the state level, and it's very clear, and I'm very appreciative of the fact that the Reno+Sparks Chamber certainly understands the business case for Nevada's clean economy and just what the opportunities are. It's never been a tough sell, but now certainly in the midst of a pandemic and of all the economic pressures that we're feeling, it's even more acute than ever to really think about the opportunities ahead of us. These are certainly trying times. I don't know if, like you, or if any of you like me, have your list of experts that you like to follow related to the pandemic. One of my favorites is Andy Slavitt, who has a podcast called In the Bubble. He's a great one on Twitter to follow. He wrote a great piece this week that talks about the saying, it's always darkest before the dawn. And that most times that trite saying, he labels it as sometimes trite, is said by people who don't know when the dawn is going to come. we are in a very unique situation. As we heard from Governor Sisolak yesterday and the expert members of his team, we are on the precipice of vaccine rollout. So we know with a good deal of confidence that we are on a road to recovery, both from a public health standpoint and from an economic standpoint. So Andy Slavitt's point was, this is a magic moment where it is very dark. We certainly understand the suffering that's happening in our community all across the state, all across the nation, and across the world. But this is our moment to take stock, think about what's important, think about what the possibilities are, and certainly for this conversation, knowing that the road to recovery in Nevada is one that can lead to a cleaner, more prosperous, and more just future, and that we can do that with climate action is really exciting. So thank you again, Ann. Thank you to the Chamber for putting this on, and I really look forward to the program.
Thank you, David, very much. It's now time to move into our two separate panels with our two separate moderators, Senator Chris Brooks and Dr. Kristen Everett.
And I just wanted to welcome everyone. Good afternoon, and thank Ann Silver and thank the Reno+Sparks Chamber of Commerce for hosting such an important and timely conversation about engaging all sectors in climate action. I am Senator Chris Brooks. I represent Nevada Senate District 3 down here in Las Vegas, right in the middle of town. And I believe that the climate crisis is the greatest threat facing our planet and our nation and our great state. And I also believe it's our moral responsibility to fight it at every front. We owe it to our children and our children's children. And it's one of the primary reasons I ran for office. While we do have a battle ahead of us, we also have some amazing opportunities. And I love to paint this picture about what we have in front of us. We have no fossil fuels in Nevada, no coal, no oil, no gas. We import over $8 billion a year in greenhouse gas emitting fossil fuels, fossil energy. But what we do have, or we have an abundant renewable resources. We have solar, we have wind, energy storage, baseload geothermal and hydropower. And our most important resource that we have here in the state of Nevada are hardworking, entrepreneurial, resilient Nevadans, just like all of you who are watching this panel today. We are leaders in renewable energy generation and storage, attracting billions of dollars of investment and employing tens of thousands of Nevadans, all making a living wage because of our great businesses and some smart policies we have in the state. We have North America's only operating lithium mine, which is the main ingredient in energy storage and electric vehicles. The only vehicles we manufacture here in the state of Nevada are electric vehicles. We are the best situated state for decarbonizing our transportation system through electrification. Believe it or not, Nevada is one of the most urban states in the entire nation, making us a great candidate for public transportation. And most Nevadans have a commute well within the range of even the most affordable electrical vehicles. Because we are blessed to be located in the crossroads of transmission for the West, we have the opportunity to be a key part of a Western regional energy market, saving us money, creating more renewable energy jobs, and creating high-paying local jobs, all while helping to decrease our emissions. Nevada is uniquely positioned to do our part in this battle against the climate crisis, as well as helping our neighbors, our neighboring states, meet their goals as well. I started a clean energy company here in Nevada 20 years ago and have been working in this industry ever since. I have made a great living and have employed thousands of Nevadans along the way. So I'm excited to hear from our panelists on how their sector is taking climate action, and I hope we can inspire those watching on how they can do the same, both for our environment and for our economy. One of the things that I did in the legislature was pass a bill that created goals to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, and it also created a need to have a report done by the state. That report came out and it laid out the groundwork for where we need to work. And then, as we heard from David Bobsien at the Governor's Office of Energy, they just introduced and released a plan of action on how we meet those goals just 2 days ago. And so I urge everyone on the call or everyone on this panel that's watching today to take a look at both of those reports and listen to our panelists and identify ways that you can act, but also opportunities that exist that you could take advantage of. And so with no further delay, I would love to introduce our panelists and invite them to spend a few minutes describing how they're working in their sector to engage in climate action. And I will start with Brian Beffort from the Sierra Club. Welcome, Brian. How you doing?
Chris, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Brian Beffort. I am the director of the Toiyabe chapter of the Sierra Club. As you know, Sierra Club's a national organization. The Toiyabe chapter covers all of Nevada and the Eastern Sierra from Tahoe down through Bishop and Mammoth. I was born here in Reno. I have degrees in journalism and sustainability and environmental management, and I've been working in the nonprofit environmental sector here in Nevada since 2001. Sierra Club's the nation's oldest, largest grassroots environmental organization, founded in 1892 by John Muir, and we've spent most of our 128 years protecting places. Kings Canyon, Muir Woods, stopping dams in the Grand Canyon, places like that. But in the recent decades, the environmental movement has expanded so much, and now it touches everything. It's the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, and the places where we live, work, and play. And climate touches all of that. Our work here in the state involves mainly educating the public and recruiting and supporting citizens to be stronger advocates where decisions are being made. We also have teams that work on public lands, wildlife, energy, water, waste and recycling, and other issues. And like I said, climate's a common theme for all of them. I've been really honored. This is a great time to be in this work. And I've been honored to contribute in small ways to Reno's Sustainability and Climate Action Plan, to be present at the legislature when Chris Brooks led the charge to pass important legislation, and in this most recent Nevada Climate Initiative process. So I'm really proud and glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. And next, I'd like to hear from Lee Dyer from the University of Nevada, Reno.
Thank you. Hi, I'm the director of the Ecology, Evolution, and Conservation Biology Interdisciplinary Program here at UNR. And the provost asked me to join as a panelist because I've been studying chemical ecology, biodiversity, and climate change as an academic scientist for about 30 years now. But I've also, as a part of my outreach efforts, I've worked with international banks and corporations to help them understand climate science and also to help them with sustainability planning. And that's something that university scientists are doing more of. They have to have outreach efforts as part of their research. So as the representative of the Nevada University sector, I can just I'll make a few comments about how we can help and how we can be available for any planned actions. So the three areas identified by the IPCC as important areas for mitigation are energy provision, urban planning, and land use and deforestation. And at UNR, DRI, TMCC, all the NSHE organizations or institutions, there's considerable expertise in studying those areas of mitigation as well as areas of adaptation. And some of the studies that are done at the universities in Nevada might not seem like obvious mitigation choices. So there's obvious things such as switching to solar, wind, or small hydro energy sources, as has already been mentioned, or retrofitting buildings to make them more energy efficient, developing more sustainable transport. But there are also a lot of less obvious things that researchers at the universities can help with. One really good example, and especially for Nevada, where we're expected to have more drought, would be to help small businesses and institutions get rid of their lawns and switch to native vegetation. And there's a lot of expertise just at UNR and how one might do that, but there's an incredible amount of energy and CO2 emissions associated with lawns at small businesses. So that's just one example. What I would like to do is put in the chat a link to a Google Drive that I created with just a few, let's see. I think that should have gone into, whoop, that was sent privately. I will put the link when I'm done speaking here to make sure it goes to all the other panelists and all the participants. But in that link, I have a number of university resources such as degrees in sustainable energy, graduate programs that are related to all of these issues, and centers that can be useful in any of these.
We appreciate that, and the link is in the chat, and so we have that right now. So appreciate you for sharing that with us. And next, I have Tyre Gray from the Nevada Mining Association, and we also have Alan Biaggi joining us from the Nevada Mining Association as well. But Tyre, if you wanted to tell us a few things about yourself and what your organization is doing and climate action, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to do so, Senator Brooks. Good to see you again. And thank you to the Reno+Sparks Chamber for hosting this event. My name is Tyre Gray, and I'm the president of Nevada Mining Association. I have Alan Biaggi here with us, who is our director of environmental programs here at the Nevada Mining Association. You know, mining plays a critical role in the green future that we want, not only from the state perspective, but from a planet perspective, in providing the raw resources for what we'll need in order to make that technology a reality. However, the mining sector can play an additional critical role in making sure that our manners of operation are in such a way that are environmentally friendly. And again, I always say, kind of like when I was a kid and in the 80s, my grandfather and I would go camping, and he would hop into a 1956 Ford, and a huge black cloud of smoke would pop up, right? But that didn't mean that my grandfather didn't care about the environment. What that meant was that was the available technology. And so as technology improves and as we know better, then we have an obligation to do better. And that's the commitment that we're seeing coming out of the mining industry today. So look forward to engaging in the conversation.
Thank you, Tyre, and I'm glad you brought some backup with you today in case you give me tough questions.
Oh no, that was really, I was at a board meeting earlier today, so I didn't know if I was going to make it. So I appreciate Alan, but Alan does have, again, coming from a regulatory background, having worked within the state, and has a wealth of knowledge. So I look forward to being able to engage Alan in this conversation.
Thank you. And next, we have Naomi Duerr from the city of Reno. And Naomi, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing at the city of Reno.
Sure. Thrilled to be here. Thank you so much, Senator Brooks, and thank you so much to the Reno+Sparks Chamber for even thinking about hosting this event. I am Naomi Doer. I currently serve on the Reno City Council. I'm about 6 years in, starting my 7th year as a council member. And it's been a privilege to serve with other environmental leaders on that council. By way of background, I'm a geologist. I actually work in the mineral exploration field with my husband, went to the School of Mines, Mackey School of Mines at UNR. But in a master's program, I kind of shifted my focus to water and did a master's on geothermal energy. And it's coincidental, but I happen to be living in a house on top of the resource that I studied in my master's program. So it's kind of like a full circle thing, which I really enjoy. I had an opportunity to serve as the state water planner. And of course, in that role, got to know many of you, including Alan. And we really did a great thing there, which was to come out with a very proactive, kind of forward-looking water plan. And water is a key element of anytime you talk about energy, the environment in any capacity. But what I want to talk about just a little bit here today is what the city's been doing. So when I first came on council, what we did was we adopted a strategic plan, and that strategic plan had sustainability as one of its key elements. We knew we really wanted to shift focus at the city. Prior to that point, I had already installed 36 solar panels on my own house. So I was committed on a personal level, ended up participating in a very lengthy and sometimes adverse PUC hearing about how renewable energy would roll out, how we would get credits for those investments that we had made, what kind of remuneration we would get for contributing energy back to the grid. So I was sort of very engaged, both having the geothermal background, a wind system on my property, and a whole solar system on my house. So the strategic plan was something we could all agree on. And as you go through these things, it gets more and more difficult. The next thing we did at the city was to actually adopt a master plan, which really talks what kind of policies are you going to adopt in terms of the environment, in this case, in the sustainability field. And we laid out some very key policies. And that was followed up by us, as you earlier heard, adopting a climate action plan or a sustainability plan. And we're now at the phase of putting that into action. So it's a good thing to write these plans down on paper, but what does it really mean in terms of actions that you're going to implement? Well, right now, we are working on re-energizing Reno in terms of working with the business industry and personal industries on how to use less energy in the buildings. It's a key element of the plan. Trees are a key element, the urban forest. Later in this program, we're going to have the Pinecone Awards. I'm extremely privileged to have been selected to win one of those Pinecone Awards, specifically for adopting a new program for the city called Relief Reno. And our goal there is to double the number of trees in Reno so that we can help address the climate change, the great increase of temperature that Reno has experienced. Waste management is a key element of the plan. Right now, we've opened up our waste management plan, and we're looking at that in terms of what is going to be the future when we really reopen it for good. We're taking a look at it. Food sustainability is a key element. I personally am involved in a nonprofit called Soulful Seeds, and we look at community gardens and those kind of activities that you can do on a personal level. And then something that I think most of the people listening today will be interested in is we are actually moving forward to make changes in what we call Title 18. Title 18 is our development code, and it really speaks to, if you're going to move forward with a development in the city of Reno, what kind of things can you do in that property, or do you need to do to effectuate sustainability in your development? And I have found, according to our staff, it's been one of the more controversial elements of this Title 18 update. And I think it's exactly what happens. It's easy to talk about big picture issues. It's easy to adopt policies. It gets harder to adopt regulations or specific plan. And now we're at the regulation point, and there's been a fair amount of pushback. And just in one nutshell, what does it look like? The sustainability section is really set out as a menu of things that developers can pick amongst to achieve certain goals. And I really think it's the must aspect of that that's kind of bothering people. They talked about maybe making part of it optional the first year. Let's just see how that goes. And our planning commission just voted about a week ago to say, no, we don't want to take a year thinking about it. We want people to start doing it. So I think that kind of lays the groundwork, Senator Brooks, in terms of, me personally, my commitment to what we're discussing here today, the city's commitment, and now we're looking for all the residents and all the businesses to come together and let's do this thing.
I agree. Well, thank you so much. Thank you. Next, I'd like to hear from Mike Kasmierski from EDAWN, and what Mike, what you guys are doing and what opportunities you see out there and how you guys are engaging in climate action.
First of all, thank you all for your efforts to address climate change. It is really at the top of the issue list it should be for everyone. I'm the CEO of EDAWN, the Economic Development Authority of Western Nevada. I've been here about 9 years and lead a team of professionals that work on a couple of major areas: attracting great companies, retaining the ones that are here, upgrading our workforce, and entrepreneurial development. And we've been very successful over the past several years. Our diversified economy compared to Vegas is pretty dramatic in the difference we have now. Our unemployment rate is half that of Vegas and actually below the national average. Our sales tax revenue is up this year over last year, which is hard to believe. Our gaming revenue is up this year over last year, which is hard to believe. And our household income is up 45% in the last 7 years. And that's due in large part to a number of things, but the 200 plus new companies that have come to this region have helped us diversify, and most of the people in those industries are at work now. That gives us the sustainability we need as a community. Now, the good news is a lot of the companies that have come here are very focused on clean energy or sustainability. They understand the value of it. They've been very good corporate partners in that area. And really, sustainability and clean energy has been part of our program from day one. We incorporated in many of the companies we work with. We actually work with the companies to do energy audits. There are, if you look at the entrepreneurial program, many of the ideas and initiatives in that area address clean energy or sustainability issues, and we've been very successful there. On the workforce side, really the STEM skills we've pushed, STEAM skills ultimately allow for the talent to grow in and fill the jobs of the companies we're bringing. And then finally, on the new companies, we have a company that we'll announce next week that will be the first totally green data center in the world coming to our region. And again, designating Northern Nevada and Nevada overall as the place to be if you want to be in the clean energy sector. And obviously our strength with geothermal and solar has been a very big factor in that. So that's just a short summary.
Well, thank you, Mike. I as somebody who just watched the Economic Forum and is going to be the new chair of Senate Finance next session, that the diversification that's taking place in the area where you're working to try to make that happen is really saving us right now, because we are so dependent on the hospitality and tourism industry in Southern Nevada, and the state's budget is so dependent on that piece of our tax revenue, that the diversification that's taken place specifically in the regions that you're talking about and the work you've done is really helping us through this rough time right now. So I think that's timely that we discuss that issue in the midst of what's happening around us. So thank you very much, Mike. I appreciate that. I had a few questions. I wanted to go up to Brian and kind of address what NGOs and specifically the Sierra Club, the role that they play and how that they can interface. The Sierra Club is a leader. We all know the Sierra Club. They're a leader in the grassroots efforts in our transition to clean energy and transportation, and also playing a huge role in the development of state policies. As you mentioned, you've lobbied the legislature and you have a grassroots army out there. How can the Sierra Club collaborate with local and state partners in our effort to support the business community and mobilize members towards our shared goals for a transition to a low carbon economy?
Senator, thank you. Yeah, I think Sierra Club has put most of our energy into advocating for systemic change, right? The best way to get more people to use renewable energy is to require utilities to generate renewable energy and have cities like Reno adopt ambitious climate action plans. And thank you, City Councilwoman Duerr, for your work at the city level, Senator, for your work at the legislative level with SB 358 to improve our renewable portfolio standard, SB 254 to reduce carbon. Like you're leading so much of that work, and we really appreciate it. And the legislature, the state, the city all deserve credit for committing to stronger renewable and carbon reduction goals. And we support and celebrate ambitious policies and strive to make them as strong as possible. Once these policies are in place, like I think that's where Ms. Doer had it right. Like we all need to get together and start doing the work. It's up to all of us, businesses and residents, to start implementing, to work to reduce our carbon footprint and toxic impact on our lands and waters. And there are easy examples like buying EVs and fleets, providing charging stations, and encouraging our staff and tenants to buy them too. Improving energy efficiency in our buildings, working to make our supply chains more sustainable, and using green infrastructure whenever possible to capture the rain, reduce toxic stormwater runoff, and reduce the urban heat island effect. And Ms. Duerr talked about the relief program to increase Reno's tree canopy, and that's exactly part of what we're talking about. But you know, and that covers the initial first steps. After that, when it comes to some of the stickier, more challenging problems, the research, the development, and the innovation that the business community provides, that you bring to the table, those are incredibly important. And some of the answers we don't have yet, and we're like looking for you to come up with markets and technologies and, you know, ways we can make that return on investment better. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Brian. And you know, there is so much more that we can do, but what the progress we've made just in the time I've been in this industry is pretty significant, and it's amazing to look back. And so sometimes there's a lot ahead of us, but it's good to look back and pat yourself on the back a little bit on all the progress that we've made as a state. I have a question here for Lee, and you know, in addition to all the academic work and all the scientific work and the studies that take place and the reporting that's shared with your peers, I have a question from Vanessa out there, an attendee, and I'm very curious too. What is higher education doing to integrate climate action into developing a workforce for tomorrow?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. It is not only, climate change is not only one of the most important issues that academics face today, and not just in the sciences, but in many fields. It's also a really important goal for education. So we, at the university level, I have seen at multiple universities, not just UNR or NSHE universities, I have seen more programs directed towards dealing with climate change. So for example, at UNR, we have the Graduate Renewable Energy Certificate, which I think it's accessible to citizens who are not students at UNR. They don't have to be in a graduate program at UNR. So that's a higher level education that's very accessible. And then there are graduate degrees that are focused on climate change. So in our own program at EUCB, there's a lot of dissertations that focus on the causes and consequences of not just CO2, but other greenhouse gases, and also the consequences of different management policies that have been put in place. For other levels of education, it's part of the curriculum of science courses. So if it's a biology course, it's part of the curriculum, it's in biology textbooks. And then for K through 12, there is, as I mentioned before, a lot of outreach. So faculty from universities will go out and discuss issues surrounding climate change with K through 12 schools around the state. So I don't know if that completely answered the question, but those are some of the things that we can do. As I mentioned before, I think a lot of these institutes, or things like the Nevada Institute for Sustainability, are also available to businesses and to anybody really who has an interest in creating a sustainability program.
Thank you, Lee. As a proud parent of a brand new UNR graduate who's now working in the clean energy space, I applaud everything that we're doing here at the state and in our education, in our university system and in public education. When we think of clean energy and we think of decarbonization, a lot of times we don't think of miners and truck drivers and railroad operators and the supply chain that is associated with clean energy and energy storage and all the technologies we need to decarbonize. Tyre, could you briefly, I'm running out of time because we could talk all day long, but could you briefly talk about what mining's role in that whole supply chain is, and and how you're part of the clean energy and decarbonization economy, one of the really key important parts of it.
Yeah, most definitely. Thank you, Senator Brooks. And I've enjoyed the comments that have been made thus far. You know, mining's role, like I said, we're going to provide the raw materials, but in doing so, it's important that we make sure that our approach is smart from the start. And I'm stealing that from an initiative that we currently have with the Nature Conservancy, which is about how do we go about constructing mining operations from the very beginning to make sure that remediation and also planning from the beginning is in such a way that aligns with what our environmental goals are. Again, we recently supported, the Nevada Mining Association actually recently supported an initiative to change the usage of remediation to allow for solar panels to be part of a remediation. Again, it's hard to think that that was not a permitted use for remediation, but we're in the process of getting that approved. And, you know, again, that's just being smart. And if we're already there, why not being able to set up the operations for solar panels, particularly since there are already electricity lines running there. But, you know, also a lot of our members are frankly leading the industry. Again, Nevada mining does it the best across the planet. And I mean, that's a statement that I am happy to make, and you know, we could fact check that too. Because, you know, frankly, we're at the front end of remediation. We're at the front end of our environmental sustainability. So when we think about where do we want our minerals to come from, we really want them to come from Nevada and not from other places that may not be doing it as right. And frankly, our operators that operate here in Nevada, a lot of them will take the regulatory structure that we have in place here and spread it across the globe. Again, pre-COVID-19, a lot of people would come actually to Nevada in order to study what we were doing here. So, I mean, that's a feather in the cap. And I think a lot of you may, whether you're on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever, wherever you like to consume some of your news or some of your information, two of our major operators here in Nevada recently made some pretty bold statements. Barrick, who's a partner in Nevada Gold Mines, who's the largest mine operator here in Nevada, made an initiative to reduce their carbon emissions by 30% by 2030, and then with the goal of being carbon neutral in 2050. And again, you mean that's a very large investment, which again, to Vanessa's question about workforce. So what do we need in order to make that happen? And you mean, again, mining usually prides itself as kind of Nevada's original STEM industry, but frankly, you know, the investment in STEM. And so, you mean, one of the partnerships that we recently entered into, one of our members, is a $2 million partnership in education in STEM. So, you know, being able to set and educate our young folks in order to occupy the jobs of the future will be really important. And lastly, you know, again, I will say that Barrick and Sandvik are currently in a partnership. And again, Barrick, one of the large operators here in town and partner in Nevada Gold Mines, and where they're going to be piloting electric vehicles and electric haul trucks. And again, we've seen some of these technology be piloted in Australia, but this will be the first time that it'll be piloted here in Nevada. And you mean, that's really exciting to see what that will have in store.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Tyre. And one of the questions, and you know, this is a chamber event, and I'm assuming a lot of our members are business people, own businesses, operate businesses. Mike, I have a question for you, and for you as well, Ann. What can small businesses, operators, entrepreneurs, and folks who want to get involved in the decarbonization industry and want to play their part in helping address the climate crisis, what are some opportunities that you think that are out there for businesses to start playing a role in this?
Go ahead, Ann.
Okay. Senator Brooks, thanks for the question, because the question we often get from smaller businesses is, what can I do? Can someone give me a checklist or things that I need to let my employees know on a very practical level, you know, turning out the lights, making sure that they're being energy efficient, things that can easily be implemented and employees can read about quickly and follow. I know that there are many nonprofit organizations that belong to the Chamber of Commerce. We're going to hear from Green Up in Green, Nevada, and certainly Sierra Club. If you read their materials, and we're happy to provide them, they give very practical ways that business owners and operators can get involved in energy conservation. And then, of course, the City of Reno's plan had actionable items that if someone takes the time to go through that plan, and we're happy to email it out to any of our members or anyone on this call, there are a great deal of actionable items that people can take, things that you might not often realize you can do, but you alone or your family or in your office can get done every single day that help reduce carbon emissions, that certainly help us create a more sustainable climate plan and reach our energy goals by 2050. Mike?
Yeah, I would just add that I'm thrilled to see the state strategy being action plan, because we do strategies and strategies and strategies, and everyone has a bookshelf full of them, but we oftentimes don't commit that to action. And the question is about action, and that's really the key to getting something done. And there are a lot of things laid out in the state plan that I think are any business could look at and say, I can do some of that, I can do some of that, I can do some of that. The business world is not real keen on mandates and requirements. So there are ways to incentivize things to make them someone more willing to do it. And I think overall, an attitude that this state is taking the climate change issue and addressing it as individuals, as businesses, as local governments, and as a state, and not just the state mandate that people find a way around. So I think it's an attitude adjustment, and I think it's incentivizing ways to do things. You could even incentivize companies to do certain things where their taxes are a little bit lower, or they get a rebate, or they do this, or they do that. And you use the carrot a little bit more before we pull out the stick.
And Senator Brooks, could I jump in on that question too?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So both Anne and Mike sort of set the stage for this, and that is, Mike was talking about incentivize. A lot of the things that we've got in the sustainability plan, the climate action plan for businesses, they require neither mandates nor sticks. They just make economic sense. And I'll give you some examples. The LED lights, I mean, it's a payback. They're going to get it. Plant trees to shade your building. We worked with the Arbor Day Foundation to actually site the trees to reduce the energy consumption in the buildings. It's a savings to the owners. Working with the curbside recycling, we found out that only 35% of commercial buildings have actually signed up with Waste Management to do the recycling. It's actually cheaper to get a recycling bin as one of your bins than a regular trash bin, but most people don't know that. So there's numerous things, and it's going to translate right into economic savings for those companies without a need to mandate or incentivize. If they just, I think it really gets to the question one of the folks posted in the chat, which is about education. Most people don't know these things, right? They understand that the LED light might cost a little bit up front, and that's all they're looking at, but they're not understanding the long-term savings for their business. So I just think there's a bunch of really simple things that people can do that will help them in their bottom line.
Thank you, Naomi. I agree, and Mike and Naomi and Anne, like as a policymaker, but also as a business person here in the state and a taxpayer and employer, I prefer carrots far more than sticks. But really, what we need is to have education and just a clear path and understand what those opportunities are. So I think we could talk all day today. I know I can. I'll go down a rabbit hole when I have all this talent with me that I can ask questions. But I really, the takeaways today for me are that there are actionable items out there, and there are not just studies and reports, like Mike said, that go on the shelf, and I have plenty of them. But there is an action plan, and the city of Reno has an action plan, and the state now has an action plan based upon the reporting and the goals that we set forth. The state put forward an action plan, and it's something. It's a exhaustive, I think, how it was described by David Bobsien from the Governor's Office of Energy. I would say comprehensive, and I like it because it rates it in order of I don't know, difficulty in achieving. And so we can take a look at the low-hanging fruit, both as people and how we act in our daily lives, but also as business opportunities. And I'm an evangelist for taking advantage of a obstacle that's in front of us and turning it into a business opportunity. And it's worked out well for me in my career, but I see ways that it could work for so many other people in the state. And so I thank you once again, Anne, for putting this together. And if you look in the chat, there are so many resources. And if you go back up to the very top of the chat, every one of us has our contact information in there. And I am, I would love to talk about this with anyone who's willing to listen to me. If you have any questions or anything that I can help with, and I'm sure the same is true of the rest of our panels.